Growing up in the United States of America, we are conditioned to believe that America is the land of the free. But as you can see right here, per the World Press Freedom Index, the United States as of 2025 only ranks 57th out of 180 countries in regards to freedom. And not only that, but in the past 7 years, dating back to 2019, the US has not been ranked above 42nd place, and it is trending downwards. And this is apparent not only in the statistics, but also in the anecdotal evidence with the plethora of videos like this one popping up on my feed and probably on your feed as well. Bearing that in mind, in this video, I will be reacting to a video from Nomadic AF about how they thought they were free in America until they moved abroad. And again, I've been seeing a lot of videos with very similar titles to this in my feed. And in fact, I think I even made one myself not too long ago. But that said, let's go ahead and get into this reaction.
Okay, so growing up in the United States, we always felt that we were living in the land of the free. But when we moved abroad, we realized that that was just not the case.
Right. This is the story that you hear time and time again. Honestly, I don't know of too many people who left America and moved abroad and wanted to move back. I've seen some people who maybe moved abroad and then moved back due to familial reasons, but I've never really seen anybody who moved away from the US to another country and willingly came back on their own accord, just because they desired to be back in America. I'm sure it's happened, I just haven't seen it. Now, here's the thing. I can tell just based on the background of their video that they're probably in a place that is very similar to Thailand. So they probably went with the lower cost of living route. In other words, when we talk about freedom, there are basically two kinds of freedoms for most people in practical terms. The first kind is having societal freedom, the freedom to be and do who you want to be and what you want to do. And you'll find that in pretty much every European country, especially every European country that I myself have been to, especially a country like the Netherlands, which is very, very progressive, both politically and socially. But then the other kind of freedom, which is the freedom that I'm indulging in right now, and evidently they are as well, is financial freedom. That's the freedom where you take your US dollars and you go to Thailand, you go to Mexico City, you go to Vietnam, so on and so forth, and you secure that kind of freedom. The thing is, in the US, you don't really have either kind of freedom, especially in this day and age. America, politically and socially, seems to be moving backwards. It seems to be regressing. So, again, for as much as America likes to proclaim that it is the land of the free, that's just not the case.
Hey all, it's Paul and Natasha from Nomadic AF. How's it going? So, living in the U.S., we're always brought up, oh, it's the land of the free. You're free to do this and that, but that's just bull. That's just propaganda. You're really not free to do much of anything, and we're not talking about like freedom of speech or freedom to own guns or any of that other BS that you're not free to do, actually.
Right.
But we're talking about things, just simple things like getting out of the house and doing things, or leaving the job you don't like, and stuff like that. And we're just going to go over a couple really quick that made us realize after we left the country that there's no freedom there.
So I love that he mentioned not being able to leave the job that you don't like, because I think there's kind of this misconception where people talk about at-will employment applying to both the employer and the employee, meaning that you can quit theoretically whenever you want. The problem is so many people who are occupying these job positions have student loan debt. And when you have student loan debt, what you quickly discover is that you are an indentured servant for all intents and purposes. Now, some people are able to pay off the debt, but those people are in the minority. The vast majority of people with student loan debt are taking that debt with them through most of their adult lives. And it is definitely creating an adverse effect on their retirement prospects.
For me, I thought I was free in the States because I had a car and I could move around.
But that's not the case. We realized living overseas, like, a car isn't freedom. That's actually hindering your freedom.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. When I was 16 years old, I got my driver's license, and I had never felt freer up to that point in my whole entire life. But what I realized, especially with going to the Netherlands, is that in many cases, a car infringes upon your freedom, not intrinsically, but simply due to a lack of options. The problem is you have to have a car in much of the US, especially in a place like Dallas, where I come from. You cannot operate as an adult without a car, at least not consistently. So, that right there, I think a lot of Americans don't really realize how much they are being oppressed. Yes, I am saying the word oppressed by having to own a car. What that does to their finances, especially at scale over time.
We live in places where we don't need a car. We haven't had a car in 15 years.
Yeah, we've never lived in a drivable city for ever.
No, and we live in Mexico now, and if I wanted to drive 25 minutes to the grocery store, it's a $2.50 cab ride.
Yeah.
Why do I need $1,000 monthly car payment and insurance and gas? All that is withholding your freedom. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to go on vacation or leave the country for a month and you've got this car that you spend a couple of grand on a month, that's inhibiting you from doing what you want.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's another thing a lot of Americans don't realize. I know I've covered this topic in a few of my recent videos, but just to triple down on it, Americans don't understand that by getting rid of their cars and their apartments, they will have enough money to travel overseas. They can go to places like Thailand or, in their case, Mexico, or really much of Southeast Asia, South America, and Eastern Europe, and live well below their means while still living a comparatively great life. In many cases, a better life.
Done.
Not worth it.
Nope. Okay, there. Okay, when I was living in the United States, I thought we were free because we had the best health care and we could go anywhere we want and get the best health care we could afford. Well, it turns out you can't really afford too much.
You can't afford too much. The appointments you have to schedule 2 or 3 months out, and you're better by the time you actually get to see a doctor.
Right, and a broken arm without insurance or with crappy insurance could bankrupt you in the United States.
Yeah, it's so crazy what one little accident or something can do.
Yeah, when we moved overseas, we realized the American myth of free healthcare, not free healthcare, but get the freedom to access healthcare is a joke.
So it's interesting that he mentioned the broken arm example, just to drive home his point about how broken the American healthcare system is. When I was around 9 years old, I think 9 or 10 years old, I signed up for Little League football, American football, tackle American football. Now, of course, when you have people running into each other full speed, injuries are bound to happen. And after the first day of practice, I realized that I had no interest in playing American football whatsoever, at least not in an organized fashion. And what I told my friends was that my family did not have health insurance. Now, we did have health insurance. Through, I think, my dad's job, we had health insurance, which that's a whole nother matter right there, is that most Americans who have decent health insurance plans are actually getting them through their jobs, which again are at will, and their employers can terminate them at any given point. But I digress. I told my peers that I didn't have health insurance, and that's why I quit Little League football. And I didn't receive any resistance from them after that. Because even as 9 and 10-year-olds, they knew, okay, if you don't have health insurance, then yeah, you shouldn't be playing football. Again, the healthcare system is broken. And the big issue is not that it's broken, it's that a lot of Americans don't realize that it's broken.
A complete joke.
Absolute joke. Okay, when I was growing up in the United States, I thought we had the freedom to have a healthy diet, eat what we want, and that just isn't the case.
No, in the States, first of all, groceries are out of price for most people, especially if you want to eat healthy. Fruits and veg and good meats and eggs, these aren't subsidized by the U.S. government like the grains and cereal and the starches and shit and chips. Like processed crap is so cheap in the United States. So that's what the American diet, the United States diet is based on.
So I think I've mentioned this in a previous video as well, but I'd venture to say that the US is one of the only countries where you see a direct correlation between obesity and poverty. the areas that are the most impoverished are generally also the most obese. That is not a coincidence by any means. It's because more often than not, eating fast food or heavily processed food is the cheapest possible option for impoverished Americans. So they have no other choice. They can't access the organic vegetables that you can get at any grocery store in the Netherlands, for example.
Yeah, because that's what we can afford.
If you want to be free to eat a healthy diet and like organic and just take care of yourself, you're free to do it, but you probably can't afford it.
Yeah.
Living overseas, we literally have a fruit and veg truck drive up to our front door to sell us fresh, organic, inexpensive produce, and we can live.
And it's affordable.
And it's very affordable, and we can live.
Very, very affordable. So here in Thailand, for example, pretty much right outside of our condo complex, there are 2 fruit trucks within walking distance, literally within a 30-second walk. And to get a full bag of chopped pineapple, watermelon, and cantaloupe, you're paying around 70 Thai baht, which I want to say, let me actually pull my calculator out right now. 70 Thai baht is roughly $2.10 in US dollars. In the US, for a similar quantity of fruit, especially fresh and pre-chopped fruit, you are paying $10. You go to Walmart, you go to Target, you look at those big fruit trays, the big ones, you're paying around $10 for those. $10, 5 times as much. It's ridiculous.
Live this healthy lifestyle that we want to, whereas opposed to the States, you can only do that if you have the money to do that.
Yeah. So another thing is, when I lived in the States, I thought I had the freedom to spend my time how I wanted.
Yeah, well, that's not really the case. Because in order to live in the States, if you want to live even a halfway decent lifestyle, you're working minimum 40, absolute minimum 40 hours, probably 60 to 80. So no, you don't have the freedom to get out and spend your day how you want. You're either...
So exactly, this goes back to what I was saying earlier in the video, where you have the 2 kinds of freedom. The freedom that you find in a lot of European countries is that work-life balance freedom. So that's already built into the work culture in those countries, where part-time is actually the rule rather than the exception in a place like the Netherlands. Whereas in a place like Thailand, for example, you simply get more for your money. But either way, if you're making US dollars, or euros for that matter, you don't have to work as hard as the equivalent American would, which is a good thing.
You're working, or you're exhausted from working and you're resting.
Yeah.
You can't just up and go on a hike when you want, like we did today. You know, you cannot live the lifestyle you want. You're not free to, because you can't afford to.
Nope.
And that's what living overseas is all about. You have more freedoms, and everything is less expensive, so you do have the freedom to do things.
Absolutely.
All right, so when I was living in the States, I thought I was free to work wherever I wanted. If I didn't like my job, I can move on. But
just not the case.
That is absolutely not the case, especially when I moved overseas. I realized when I start my own business, I can literally pick and choose who I want to work with. But in the States, you can't just up and leave your job, especially if you have health care. Especially if the new place you want to work doesn't have your doctor and their healthcare plan.
Exactly. That's what I was saying earlier, where there's kind of this implied indentured servitude, not only because of the student loan situation, but also because of the health insurance situation. Especially if you have a family to provide for, you have kids need to go to the doctor for checkups, and they might break their arm in Little League football. You never know. These things do happen. You can't just up and leave your job, even if the job is creating a very, very toxic work environment for you, which many times does spill into your personal life. So honestly, it's not even in the fine print. It's between the lines. It's in the margins where they trap you.
Yeah.
And your job may not even pay you enough to live the life you want. So you might be stuck in this job that you hate, that doesn't pay you enough that you want, and you're not free to work wherever you want, because if you up and leave that job, you might not find another one.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so one last thing, and this is a big one. when I lived in the United States, I thought I was free until I realized working 40, 60, 80 hours, I wasn't free to do much of anything other than work.
Right, and that's the nice thing with living overseas and living abroad. It's not this work-based culture that is so rampant in the States. You can make a nice living for yourself working 10, 20, 30, 40 hours a week. And even better if you're working from home in the States and living abroad.
Yeah.
So you can live a much better life, but you're not free working 80 hours a week in the States.
Something else that I want to add to that I suspect a lot of Americans don't take into account, or maybe they do, I don't know, because I've never worked a 9 to 5. But when I did work at actual jobs where I had to go to the location, most of them were, really all of them were low-level service industry jobs, so working at a restaurant, working retail, folding clothes, etc. You also have to factor in the commute times. So if you're working an 8-hour shift that day, but with traffic, it's 45 minutes in each direction, that's an extra hour and a half. That's 9.5 hours out of your day. And the problem is, because there isn't any public transit to get you there, you have to drive. And when you're driving, you can't do anything else other than drive. Whereas, at the very least, if you have to commute to a job in Europe where you have the public transit, although you still have the commute time, you can use that commute to do things that you want to do. So you can read, you can watch Netflix, you can talk to people, whatever it may be. You still have time to indulge in your hobbies. So that right there, again, people aren't taking that into account when thinking about working hours, and you don't get paid for that commute time.
That's just propaganda.
Yeah, definitely not. And let us know which things you thought were free and really aren't when living in the United States, because we would love to hear them in the comments below. And while you're at it, please like and subscribe because it really does help our channel.
Yep, all right.
Till next time.
Wait.
So I think, for me personally, the biggest misconception that I had about freedom growing up, especially as I went about starting my business, being this YouTube channel right here, I thought that America provided the greatest opportunity for upward mobility. And what I quickly realized as the years went on was that it's actually the complete opposite. By simply moving to Thailand, I was able to categorically improve our quality of life, both mine and my girlfriend's, by being able to get us an apartment with a pool and a gym and just being able to live a much better lifestyle overall. You want to talk about upward mobility? That's why I say nowadays that the new American dream is actually to start making money in US dollars online or remotely, however you can, and taking that money and moving somewhere like Thailand or Mexico or Vietnam or the Philippines or Colombia or Indonesia, so on and so forth. From there, you can actually live the American dream that you were promised, with the added bonus of being able to experience a new, unfamiliar, and oftentimes more enriching culture.